Hello and welcome to our webinar about latest updates on electronic invoices in a range of selected countries. My name is Michael Hoch and I'm one of the electronic invoicing compliance experts at TrueCommerce, and I will guide you today through our webinar. Before we start, some rules or guidelines. What we plan today. So we have selected some countries we want to go through that are heavily discussed and requested at the moment. And from the organization of the webinar will be recorded. Everyone will receive an email after the webinar with the recording and also with the slide deck. You can ask some questions if you have one in the chat functionality. My colleague Bettina from our marketing department is collecting those ones, and I try to answer as many as possible at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, then feel free to put it into the chat and send it over to us. If we run out of time at the end, then we will answer the questions and come back to you individually by email with the answers. So today's agenda is overall about how does the electronic invoice compliance affect you? Why is that important? What is important to know? Then the main part is to talk about initiatives and mandates in several countries we have selected. Then we give you some checklist and guidance how to get started with that topic. And at the end, we have some time to answer questions and wrap up. So let's directly start. Why is it important? Why is the topic tax compliance, electronic invoice compliance, e-reporting so important for you? Because more and more local tax authorities across Europe and also globally are imposing requirements to fight against tax fraud. So countries can either demand a switch from paper invoices to electronic structured invoices, not to PDF. It's more to go to structured invoices. This is something what we see in a German mandate, and also Belgium has announced now in 26 to switch over to structured electronic invoices in B2B to become mandatory. Then we have some countries who are introduced what we call a continuous transaction control system. That is something we have since some years in Italy, but also Spain, France, Turkey, Poland plan to introduce these kind of reporting systems, central portals by tax authorities. Some already have concrete plans, some others postpone things because of technical issue. We will come to the different countries later. Then it can be that in some what we call post-audit countries where we do not have a central control system, that electronic signature in a qualified way is demanded. That can be in Portugal or in Spain at the moment. And of course, we can have some implementations where we have a so-called clearance by tax authorities. So you have to send the invoice content or the invoice to the tax authorities, and then they are cleared, and then you are allowed to submit them to receiver. All over, it is important to consider that it is not only mandatory if you have a subsidiary in these countries. It is also important that if you have don't have an office in these countries, but are VAT liable, so means you are paying VAT or any tax, and you have a tax ID in these countries, then it also affects your business. And unfortunately, or however you want to see it, this is a legal topic, and if you are falling into these qualified things like VAT liability or having a subsidiary in these countries, you have to take some actions. Not going too deep into the different kinds of what we have in place when we talk about electronic invoices. You know, we do ADI since more than 30 years, where in the invoice message is already used between trading partners. Then we have very popular the PEPOL, standardized method to exchange electronic documents. But what is a new trend is the two things to the right side, the mandatory invoicing and the invoice compliance, what came in Europe over the last 5 years. It started with some mandatory invoicing towards government authorities in all EU countries. Germany will move to this in 2025 also for B2B. And the invoice compliance, how we call it, with a CTC system, where you have to send the invoices through a central exchange portal or probably have to do real-time reporting to a central portal from the authorities. So this goes into the area to explain a bit more how the different continuous transaction control systems works. So we start on the right side, so real-time reporting, something that is in place in Spain at the moment before issuing or nearby in real time when you're issuing an invoice and you have to follow this mandate. Then you have to report the invoice to a tax authorities portal to get it registered or reported. Then we have a model that is called centralized exchange. That is the model we use in Italy. So the main challenge here is that you're not any longer allowed to exchange directly between you as a supplier and your buyers, your customer, the invoice. All of these has to go through the central portal by the government, or there can be a kind of clearance portal that you send the invoice before issuing to the tax authorities portal. You receive some unique IDs back or a timestamp, a qualified or whatever. That's what you have to save in your ERP system. And then you are allowed to send the invoice to your customers. And the customers or the buyers can also go then to the portal and verify if the invoice they got is the one that has been cleared by the tax authorities and double check if it's fully legal and accepted and registered invoice. And what we see now is again a trend to what I would call DCTCE. That stands for Decentralized Continuous Transaction Control Exchange. Some colleagues also call it CTC by PEPPOL because we use the advantage of the standardized message exchange from the PEPPOL network, but we combine it with the needs of tax authorities. That is something that is planned without PEPPOL in France, but in some other countries like Malaysia, it is planned to use this five-corner model, how it is also called in the future, to standardize the exchange between the trading partners and also consider the reporting needs we have in several countries. Let's step into the countries of interest we have selected today, starting with Germany. That is currently in March, finally again in the upper parliament, the Bundestag. It's part of the Economic Growth Act that is discussed since second half of last year. Then it was approved by the parliament. Then we had a second chamber called Bundesrat that had some concerns in it. And then it moved into a discussion board called Vermittlungsausschuss. There they finally decided, okay, we do some smaller adaptation, but now it's accepted and we expect the final approval of the law this week or next week, again in all the two chambers of the German legislation. It demands a transition to electronic structured invoice format, so the priority of paper will disappear. In the future, it will much easier be allowed to use electronic structured invoices in B2B. It will become sooner or later for all companies mandatory in Germany for all domestic invoices. So far not considered that also foreign invoices or invoices to foreign receivers, cross-border invoices are part of this legislation. Like in Italy, for example, there you have to do that, and also in some other legislations. Unfortunately, the transmission is not regulated in the draft act, so it's up to the trading partners to agree how they are going to exchange the invoice. Most likely it will end up in that most companies will send and receive electronic invoices by email then. Compared to the CTC initiatives we have in many other countries, what I explained with the central exchange, clearance and real-time reporting model, there's currently no plans in Germany to put in a CTC portal or a central tax authorities portal. We expect that this will come as part of the VIDA initiative of the EU anywhere between 2028 and 2030. Then they are introducing their mandate to fight against the cross-border VAT fraud. And then also this will be part of the German solution. The roadmap in Germany starts 1st of January 2025. Still some time left, so from now a bit more than 9 months, where the priority of paper invoices will disappear, and it does not require any longer the approval of the receiver to turn into exchange or sending, issuing electronic invoices. The main point here is from the 1st of September 2025, every company has to be able to receive and process electronic invoices. You cannot, if you receive an invoice in a structured electronic way, reject this one like in the past with the priority of the paper invoice any longer. You have to accept these ones for sure. And then over some several time zones or phases, it will become mandatory in 2027 for larger companies to issue electronic invoices, and in 2028 for all B2B, also companies, to move towards electronic invoicing. Again, a bit more detailed described how long it is possible to use paper invoices. So it is still possible to use it, but there's no possibility to reject if you send that. Electronic invoices, according to this Euronorm 16931, will be accepted and the future preferred, or from 2028 the only allowed format that you can use. There's a transition period of about 3 years where implemented or established EDI communications in other formats like EDIFACT invoice will still be allowed. But from 2028, it will only be allowed that electronic invoices in the defined norm will be allowed. For me, it's important that you consider receiving. It must be possible, so you must be prepared for receiving electronic invoices in one of the Euronorm defined formats from 1st of January 2025. So my recommendation is that if you start receiving or be prepared for receiving invoices in an electronic way, why not directly starting to send electronic invoices and save some further costs by not printing out, putting a stamp on an envelope and send it out to your customer. For B2B, it will sooner or later become mandatory to switch to electronic invoices. So why not starting directly from the 1st of January next year? A bit more details about what is the EN 16931. That is a norm that was defined some years ago by the CEN organization. It would mean that X-Rechnung, the today B2G format, and Zugpferd are the two formats we will expect to be the ones that are allowed in the future. Theoretically, it could also be the PEPO-BIS format, but that has some other effects if we use that, because you would only be able to use the format if your participants or trading partners would agree to use the exchange infrastructure in there. So our expectation is that Zugpferd will become again more and more popular, and also the X-Rechnung from the business to government format that we have in place will become one of these possible. Let's switch over to Poland. We had some latest negative messages like, hey, the mandate was postponed in January by the government. It will most likely stay in the described way from our earlier webinars with the KSEF portal, the defined format, who will be affected in those ones. But in this webinar, I only want to focus mainly on what has been the latest updates in the last 2 months. So in January, there was an announcement that the mandate will not go live 1st of July this year. The Ministry of Finance clearly explained that the mandate will come. It is still confirmed. Maybe that will be some slight adaptations, but they stick to the model they have decided for. Then there was an announcement by the mandate that end of April and May, beginning of May, there will be a new go live date announced. The earliest possible next go live date is the 1st of January 2025 to consider a time upfront to get everyone prepared. If this is the date, or maybe it's half a year later, we have to see. But that gives us the chance to implement have more time available for implementing this one. In February, the ministry has several meetings with business stakeholders and business representatives to discuss certain points. There are consultations scheduled because the KSEF portal was a bit unstable, but they will be taking actions to stabilize this, and also some missing draft guidelines, like for the QR code and how the authentication is done will come along to get changed, but that is fixed then in March and April. And in summer, there will be the final amendments for the mandate. So what we see from the announcement of the ministry is that the mandate will come. It will come later, but it will come. There's no reason to stop all activities to implement or get prepared for this mandate and build a connection to the central portal. We recommend our customers to proceed with the projects and get prepared, because according to the announcement by the government, the KSEF mandate will come and go live. Let's switch over to Spain, what is highly active in announcing and setting in place several different mandates. So there's the B2G mandate from the EU that came in already some years ago. And then there was a law published called Crea y Creche for the future B2B e-invoice mandate. Also, we have since some time invoice reporting for some companies towards a portal called SII. So if you have a certain company size or joining a special VAT refunding program, then you have to report electronic invoices to the SII portal. And finally, there's a fourth mandate called Verifact2, that puts in place some requirements for billing systems that need to get aligned to these standards, so to be a kind of certified billing systems. Today we focus on the Crea y Creche and invoice reporting to the SII, a bit more detailed as part of that, because these are the ones that affect the electronic invoice issuing. So if you are active in Spain and you have a size with annual revenue over 6 million euro, or you are taking part of this Read-me program, then you need to report in real time or nearby real time invoices you are issuing to your buyers towards this portal. We see an increasing request from customers who want to use this program and have the need to report towards the SII portal. We have a solution in place where we can help, but talk to your local tax or auditor or guide if you are part of this program and you join that and you have to do that. That depends on what you have decided earlier. And then we have this Crea y Creche initiative. where a decentralized CTC and a kind of standardized and mandatory B2B e-invoice exchange is defined. Originally, it was planned to come earlier, and then there have been some new elections in Spain and building up the new government in Spain took some time, so that mandate was postponed. The goal of these mandates is to drive business digitalization, shorten payment time, and enforce interoperability, so means to save some costs for businesses in the future by making an exchange mandatory with some nuances. It will be a mix of private e-invoicing platforms that can be used, or you can directly connect to this portal and exchange it through that, losing some possibilities then. But interconnectivity and interoperability is enforced by the government by defining three kind of accepted formats, so UBL, XML, CFACT, EDIFACT, or Factura E B2B will be possible in the futures. What is of importance to consider is that if this program is coming, then there will be additional response messages that will be set in place, which means if you receive an electronic invoice and you have 4 days time to report back your response to the sender of the invoice and say, okay, I'm accepting this or I'm rejecting that message. And you have to send back a payment date when you plan to pay the invoice via your bank account. So it's not just standardized XML format structured. It also enforces that response messages, payment dates, and so on have to be exchanged between seller and buyer in the future when this mandate comes. So the Crea-Creche law already defines the timeline, but the timeline needs a starting point. So we are continuously waiting now for getting the final draft specification published as a royal decree anywhere in 2024. We have expected to come that already earlier, end of last year, but it has not come yet due to the new government setup. They needed some time to prepare, but as soon as this royal decree and the final specifications are coming, there's 1 year for large companies, 2 years for small, medium, and smaller companies, 3 years to get this filled in. So be prepared that there's a mandate that completely changes the B2B invoice exchange in Spain as soon as the program is launched. Then we are now leaving the European area. We are going to Saudi Arabia because that is a country where we get in the past or in the last months more and more requests. Saudi Arabia has decided to put in place a so-called invoice clearance mandate. So you have to send the invoice before issuing it to the receiver to the Central Tax Authorities portal that is called SATCA. The rollout was has already started in 2021 by putting in phase 1 with the title generation, means structured invoices will be prepared to become mandatory. So exchanging invoices, being prepared for using a standardized XML format for issuing this one. Now we are in phase 2, what is called integration, where the clearance to the Central Tax Authorities portal SATCA is becoming in several ways mandatory for businesses. This is ongoingly. It started with larger companies in the beginning, and it goes down in several ranges that also smaller companies get invited to this mandate over the time. So the inward format is defined as a structured XML. It's possible to put that into a PDF document for exchange. But if you use a PDF, in addition, it requires to have a QR code on it or in it that is coming or provided by the SATCA portal after the clearance. Transmission to the buyer is still in one-to-one, so it's possible to send it out by email or any other transmission channel. Very specific in this country, the archiving has to be compliant to local regulations, and that can mean that you have to save the electronic documents inside the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for about a period of 10 years. A bit about the timeline, the phases and the waves. So to the upper right corner, we see phase 1. That was the first phase we had. We are now in phase 2, the integration phase towards the SATCA portal. And it's really the case that the authorities send out letters to affected companies in this wave. So they are invited by a letter to join this program, and then they get 6 months time to get integrated to these different periods. At the moment, we are at the end of wave 5. So companies who have been invited to join the integration wave 5 have time until end of March to get connected. And you see that the size of the company is declared in here. Like at the moment with the wave 5 mandate, it's 100 million Saudi Arabian Riyal. That is something about 25 million euros on annual turnover. And that one, those companies have to be able to do the integration towards the SATCA portal until end of March. And there are also more invite letters have been sent out to companies of smaller size. And there will be also further waves remain that will be announced by the tax authorities in Portugal. So don't be surprised if you do business in Saudi Arabia that sooner or later your subsidiary gets an invite letter to that mandate. Shortly explaining the CTC clearance and how it works. So before you issue the invoice to the buyer, you have to send it to SATCA. It's get validated. You get a digital timestamp on the invoice. You get it returned with the QR code, and then you are allowed to send it to the buyer. The buyer itself, like typically in a clearance model, can then verify the clearance status towards the SATCA portal again. And now we return back to Romania, because Romania is also a country where we have shortly in the past new timelines, and a second timeline in July this year. So Romania is working on a mandate since quite some time. They have set up their portals over the last 3 years now. So initially, the first implementation of the RO e-Factura portal or platform was made available in 2021 for B2G invoices, and now it's extended in July that the B2B e-invoice exchange will become centralized through this RO e-Factura platform for all established businesses in Romania. The first month there was a decision not to get out for invoice reporting, for e-reporting stuff, but this penalty, end of penalty, not paying penalties in the first 3 months ends end of March. So the need to report a certain tax data to the authorities slightly disappears now. And in addition, we have from 1st of July the mandatory centralized CTC for B2B that's coming in. Well, finally to the end, some recommendation how to get started. We offer you a kind of checklist or support on consulting we can do, because the challenge is that it can become quite complex to understand the different regulations in the different countries and how to integrate that into your ERP system to have an automated approach for sending and receiving. First would be to run and pre-analyze in-house on your end. In which countries do you have business and branches, subsidiaries? Which countries are affected, or do you trade and have a VAT ID, for example, or tax ID? What is your strategy, how to exchange with your AD trading partners today? And finally, find a solution that offers you to stay compliant with all the given mandates and latest changes, because we have continuous changes in the formats and new enhancements of scopes we are reaching out. So our checklist would be, are you aware of all the latest CTC and the invoicing rules that are in all these various countries? If no, then feel free to contact us and ask for a short talk with us, or with one of with me, or with one of our e-invoicing experts inside. Well, if you're not sure that maybe there are some new VAT requirements, electronic invoicement requirements, or if you're not aware of, hey, I'm business active in these countries, but is there an upcoming CTC mandate, and so on. But if you can say, oh, I'm not sure about all these different things in all the different countries, or really I don't know, we make you an offer to get in contact with us, and we can guide you and help you to understand the different mandates in the different countries. The easiest way from our perspective is to select TrueCommerce, of course, a service provider, to connect once to our integration platform, and then we take care to connect to all these different portals, to your suppliers, to your buyers, still with ADI message exchange. But mainly it's important that we are able to connect also from the same platform to these tax authorities portals to fulfill the requirements of all the different mandates. Yeah, so feel free, quickly summarize, to get in contact with us, so we can guide you through, I would say, the jungle of latest regulations on electronic invoicing and compliance, and that you are prepared for upcoming changes and new mandates in the future. So far, so good. Bettina, do we have any questions from the chat we can answer?
Yes, we do. The first question is, what should we do with the Polish mandate? Should we wait or should we proceed?
Yeah, that is a very good question. That is what we discussed with all our customers who signed the contract, and where we are doing a rollout project at the moment. Since the Polish government has clearly announced that the mandate will come, it will stay on the KSCF. There's only a postponement in that. Our recommendation to all customers was, hey, let's move on with the implementation. Let's roll out the project to be prepared, because it doesn't make sense to stop it now and then waste the time for 3-4 months, and then again get in some further pressures to get it finalized. So our recommendation is that if you plan to do this, or already in a project to roll it out, then proceed to work on the project. Yeah.
Okay. And the last question for now is, how should we start when it comes to the German mandate?
Yeah, at least the minimum thing you have to do is to be prepared for receiving electronic invoices from the 1st of January next year. My personal recommendation would be to say, hey, I will get an X-Rechnung or you get a Zugpferd, so be prepared for these two formats that can come in. And if you want to save some additional costs and not split a project rollout into 2 phases, then you should also consider to implement the sending of structured electronic invoices out to your buyers, because that will allow you to save some money, and there's no possibility by the receivers of electronic invoices to reject. So our recommendation is, go ahead, start to be prepared for 1st of January next year. We already have some customers who ask, hey, can we set this up? Can we be prepared? And we also directly want to issue invoices in an electronic structured way from 1st of January to save costs. So my recommendation is, let's start. Yeah, any further questions?
No, not at the moment.
Yeah, then the only thing that is left is to say thank you for joining the webinar. Thank you for registering. We will have another webinar with updates in April. So if you're interested, sign up for our newsletters or sign up for the next announced webinars on this topic. It will become interesting. We already have identified some Asian countries that we will talk about in the next webinar. So thank you very much. Thank you, Bettina. And looking forward to see all of you again in 4 weeks. Bye-bye.